If you have type 2 diabetes, or you've been told your blood sugar is running higher than it should, and you've ever wondered why your numbers in the morning seem to have a mind of their own, you are in exactly the right place. Because what we're talking about today isn't just about what you eat for breakfast. It's about how you eat it, when you eat it, and why the sequence of everything on your plate matters far more than most people realize. This video is called 6 Breakfast Strategies Every Diabetic Should Use to Lower Blood Sugar Fast. And I mean that title precisely. These are not general wellness tips. These are clinically grounded, mechanistically sound strategies that target the specific hormonal and metabolic environment your body is operating in from the very first hour you wake up. Now, if you've been managing blood sugar for a while, you've probably heard the standard advice: eat less sugar, cut the carbs, go for a walk. And that's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because what the research is now showing us, research from some of the most rigorous metabolic science labs in the world, is that the structure of your breakfast may be just as powerful as any single food choice you make. The order in which nutrients enter your digestive system, the timing relative to your medications, the specific ratio of protein to fiber to fat on that first plate, all of it sends a cascade of hormonal signals through your body that either protect you or expose you to dangerous glucose spikes for the next 6 to 8 hours. Not just the next hour, the entire day. Here's something I want you to hold in your mind as we go through this together, because we'll come back to it at the end. There is a phenomenon in metabolic science called the second meal effect. And when you understand what it is, at a biological level, you will never think about breakfast the same way again. It fundamentally changes the logic of everything we're about to discuss. So stay with me, we'll get there. I want you to know the work that went into this video. I've reviewed and synthesized data from peer-reviewed clinical trials, including research published in journals like Diabetes Care, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and the Journal of Nutrition. I've looked at studies specifically focused on individuals over 60, because the metabolic picture changes significantly as we age. Insulin sensitivity declines, gastric motility slows, hormonal responses shift, and advice designed for a 35-year-old simply doesn't map cleanly onto the physiology of a senior managing long-term diabetes. Everything in this video is grounded in science that is relevant to you, specifically. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Let's begin with the most foundational strategy of all, and the one that generates the most dramatic, immediate results in clinical settings. The first strategy is this: eat your protein first, always. Not alongside your other foods, not after, first, and not a token amount. We're talking a minimum of 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein before anything else crosses your lips. This means eggs, plain Greek yogurt with no added sugar, cottage cheese, lean poultry, or even a small portion of smoked salmon. The reason this works goes deep into gastrointestinal physiology. When protein arrives in the stomach first, it triggers the release of a hormone called cholecystokinin, CCK, from the cells of your small intestinal wall. CCK is a powerful signal. It tells your stomach to slow down its emptying rate, meaning the entire contents of your meal move into the small intestine at a significantly reduced pace. This is called delayed gastric emptying, and for a person with diabetes, it is one of the most protective digestive mechanisms that exists. Here's why that matters at a cellular level. When food moves quickly from the stomach into the small intestine, as it does when you eat carbohydrates first, glucose is absorbed rapidly into the portal vein, floods the liver, and then enters systemic circulation in a sharp spike. Your pancreatic beta cells scramble to release insulin, but if those cells have been worn down by years of overwork, which is common in type 2 diabetes, the response is sluggish. The glucose spike outpaces the insulin. You hit 200, 220, sometimes higher, within an hour of eating. That spike triggers inflammation. It damages blood vessel walls. It stresses the kidneys, and it produces a reactive low later in the morning that leaves you fatigued, foggy, and hungry again. Protein eaten first creates what researchers sometimes call a metabolic speed bump. A 2022 study in diabetes care demonstrated that when adults with type 2 diabetes ate protein and vegetables before their carbohydrate portion, peak postprandial glucose, meaning the peak blood sugar after the meal, was reduced by nearly 30% compared to eating the same foods in a carbohydrate-first sequence. That is a staggering result from nothing more than changing the order of what you eat. No new drugs, no caloric restriction, just sequence. The second strategy is to build fiber into your breakfast through non-starchy vegetables. I'm talking about spinach, bell peppers, broccoli, zucchini, cucumber, kale. These foods should occupy a significant portion of your plate, not a garnish, not an afterthought. And here's the mechanism that makes them so powerful specifically for glucose control. Soluble fiber, the kind abundant in vegetables like broccoli and spinach, dissolves in the watery environment of your gut and forms a viscous, gel-like substance along the lining of the intestinal wall. Picture a layer of gel coating the inside of a tube. What that gel does is physically slow the rate at which glucose can be absorbed through the intestinal epithelium and into your bloodstream. It's a physical barrier against the glucose spike. Clinical research has shown that this gel matrix can reduce postprandial glucose peaks by up to 25%. But the benefits extend beyond that immediate meal. The fermentation of soluble fiber by your gut microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, propionate, acetate, that have been shown to improve insulin sensitivity in peripheral tissues, particularly in muscle cells, which are the primary site of glucose uptake. So by eating fiber-rich vegetables at breakfast, you are not only blunting the glucose spike from that meal, you are improving your body's ability to respond to insulin for the rest of the day. This is one of the mechanisms behind the second meal effect I mentioned at the beginning. The third strategy involves healthy fats, and this is where I want to correct a misunderstanding that has caused enormous harm over the past 4 decades. There has been a persistent belief promoted heavily in the 1980s and 1990s that fat is the enemy and that low-fat products are inherently healthier. For a person with diabetes, low-fat products are frequently the opposite of healthy. When food manufacturers remove fat to create a low-fat version of yogurt, cream cheese, or dairy-based products, they almost universally replace it with sugar, modified starches, or other rapidly absorbed carbohydrates to maintain palatability. You are trading a macronutrient that stabilizes blood sugar for one that spikes it. Healthy fats, avocado, olive oil, walnuts, chia seeds, flaxseed, full-fat plain Greek yogurt, slow gastric emptying in the same way protein does, contributing to that favorable deceleration of glucose absorption. They also blunt the insulinemic response to a mixed meal. A landmark trial published in the Annals of Internal Medicine demonstrated that replacing refined carbohydrates with monounsaturated fats, the kind found in avocado and olive oil, led to significant improvements in HbA1c levels over 12 weeks in individuals with type 2 diabetes. The fat didn't cause harm. The fat protected them. When you add a quarter of an avocado to your breakfast, or dress your eggs with a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil, you are not indulging. You are applying biochemistry. The fourth strategy is one that requires a psychological shift as much as a behavioral one. Minimize carbohydrates at breakfast. And if you do eat them last. Let me be absolutely clear. Carbohydrates are not poison. They are not inherently forbidden. But for a person with type 2 diabetes, they are the nutrient that most directly and powerfully elevates blood glucose. And eating them on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning, in the context of the dawn phenomenon, is the worst possible time and sequence in which to consume them. The dawn phenomenon is a well-characterized physiological event that occurs in the early morning hours, roughly between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. During this window, your body releases a surge of cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, and catecholamines as part of its preparation for waking activity. These counter-regulatory hormones signal the liver to release stored glucose, a process called hepatic glucose output, so that your muscles and brain have fuel available from the moment you open your eyes. In a healthy individual without diabetes, the pancreas releases a corresponding pulse of insulin to handle this glucose. In a person with type 2 diabetes, that compensatory insulin response is blunted. The result is that your blood sugar is already elevated when you sit down for breakfast, before you've eaten a single bite. Eating a bowl of sweetened cereal, a glass of orange juice, or a white flour bagel on top of that already elevated baseline is metabolically catastrophic. It stacks a dietary glucose load on top of an already active hepatic glucose dump, and the spike that follows can push levels well above 200 milligrams per deciliter. If you want carbohydrates at breakfast, and you can have them, choose minimally processed options like steel-cut oats rather than rolled oats, or a small portion of fresh berries. Steel-cut oats have a glycemic index nearly 40% lower than instant oatmeal, because the physical structure of the grain remains more intact, requiring more digestive work and slower breakdown. Berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries are rich in polyphenols that have been shown to independently reduce the rate of intestinal glucose absorption by inhibiting specific enzymes, including alpha-glucosidase. But the critical instruction is this: eat these after your protein, after your vegetables, and after your healthy fats. By the time those carbohydrates reach your small intestine, they will encounter a gut already primed with a gel matrix of fiber, a slowed gastric emptying rate from protein and fat, and a significantly lower peak absorption rate. The glucose that enters your bloodstream will do so in a gentle, manageable slope, rather than a cliff-edge spike. The fifth strategy is about timing, and it is often overlooked in favor of focusing exclusively on food composition. Clinical evidence strongly supports eating your first meal within 1 to 2 hours of waking, not because of some arbitrary rule, but because of how it intersects with your circadian biology. Your body's insulin sensitivity, meaning how effectively your cells respond to insulin and absorb glucose from the bloodstream, follows a circadian rhythm that peaks in the morning and declines toward evening. This is not a small difference. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism has demonstrated that insulin sensitivity in the morning can be up to 50% higher than in the late afternoon or evening in some individuals. Eating while your insulin sensitivity is at its daily peak means the same meal will produce a lower blood sugar response than it would if eaten several hours later. There is also a critical intersection here with medication timing that I want to address with great care. Many individuals with type 2 diabetes take oral hypoglycemics, like metformin, or newer agents like GLP-1 receptor agonists, SGLT2 inhibitors, or sulfonylureas. These medications have specific pharmacokinetic profiles, meaning they have precise windows of time in which they are most active in your system. Eating too early or too late relative to your medication can result in either a dangerous mismatch, your medication working while your blood sugar is already low, or an inadequate response, where the medication hasn't yet reached peak activity when your glucose begins to rise. I cannot tell you the exact timing for your specific medications. That must come from your physician or pharmacist. What I am telling you is that the timing of your first meal is a clinical variable, not a trivial detail. Discuss it explicitly with your care team. The sixth strategy is perhaps the most straightforward, but it requires absolute commitment. Eliminate the foods that have no place at a diabetic breakfast table. And I don't mean eating them occasionally or in smaller portions. I mean removing them from your morning routine entirely. Let's go through the most common offenders and examine precisely why they are harmful. Fruit juice, including orange juice, apple juice, and even so-called natural juices, is liquid sugar with the fiber removed. When you eat a whole orange, the fiber in the fruit creates that gel matrix we discussed, slowing glucose absorption. When you drink orange juice, you are consuming an equivalent quantity of sugar, roughly 21 grams in an 8-ounce glass, with no fiber, no physical barrier, and a transit time from mouth to bloodstream of less than 20 minutes. A 2013 study in the British Medical Journal found that consuming fruit juice was associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, while consuming whole fruit was associated with a decreased risk. The difference is the fiber. Remove it, and you have a metabolically dangerous beverage regardless of its origin. Flavored and sweetened yogurts are another major offender. Many commercial yogurt products marketed as healthy breakfast choices contain 12 to 25 grams of added sugar per serving. This is particularly deceptive because yogurt, in its plain, full-fat form, is actually an excellent breakfast food for diabetics, high in protein, containing beneficial bacteria that support gut microbiome diversity, and with a moderate fat content that slows gastric emptying. It is the added sugar that transforms it from a benefit into a hazard. Read labels. The only yogurt worth buying is plain Greek yogurt with no added sugar. Commercial breakfast cereals, even those labeled whole grain or heart healthy, are among the most heavily processed foods available. The extrusion process used to manufacture most cereals destroys the physical structure of the grain almost entirely, creating a product that is absorbed nearly as rapidly as pure glucose. Glycemic index values for most commercial cereals range from 70 to above 90, on a scale where 100 represents pure glucose. These products should not be in your home. Pastries, muffins, white bread, bagels, and most baked goods made from refined flour follow the same metabolic logic. They are rapidly converted to glucose in the gut. They arrive at the intestine as a simple sugar load with minimal fiber to slow absorption, and they spike blood glucose sharply within 30 to 60 minutes of eating. A commercial blueberry muffin, which many people consider a reasonable breakfast, can contain 55 to 65 grams of total carbohydrate with minimal protein and negligible fiber. Eating one is functionally similar to drinking a can of soda in the morning. Now let's return to where I promised we would, the second meal effect. This concept, first formally described by Dr. David Jenkins at the University of Toronto in research dating back to the 1980s and refined extensively since, refers to the observation that eating a low-glycemic, high-fiber, high-protein breakfast doesn't just benefit your glucose response during that meal. It measurably improves your body's glucose response to lunch as well, even when lunch is eaten 3 to 5 hours later. The mechanisms behind this are multiple and fascinating. First, the short-chain fatty acids produced by the gut microbiome, fermenting your breakfast fiber, are still circulating and exerting their insulin-sensitizing effects during the lunch period. Second, GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, a gut hormone that enhances insulin secretion and slows gastric emptying, continues to be influenced by the microbiome activity that your breakfast initiated. Third, the physical gel matrix in your gut from soluble fiber may still be present in the early stages of lunch digestion, providing partial protective benefit even hours later. This is why the compounding effect of consistent strategic breakfasting is so powerful. When you eat correctly in the morning, every day for 30 days, you are not just managing one meal. You are daily resetting the hormonal baseline that governs your entire day's metabolic function. Clinical trials tracking a 1C glycated hemoglobin, the 3-month average blood sugar marker, in individuals who adopted structured breakfasting protocols, have demonstrated reductions of 0.4 to 0.8 percentage points over 8 to 12 weeks from breakfast changes alone. For context, that is a clinically meaningful improvement in the range of what some medications produce, achieved through food sequencing and composition. The practical picture of what this looks like at your table is this. You wake up, and within 1 to 2 hours, you sit down to a plate that begins with 2 or 3 eggs scrambled in olive oil, alongside a generous portion of sautéed spinach and bell peppers. You eat the eggs first, then the vegetables. If you want a small amount of steel-cut oats or a handful of berries, they come afterward, after the protein and fiber have already done their protective work. Full-fat plain Greek yogurt can accompany this as an additional protein source. A handful of walnuts or a few slices of avocado add the healthy fat component. This is not a complicated or expensive meal. It is a precise one. People who implement these 6 strategies consistently report dramatic changes in their morning glucose readings. Post-breakfast numbers that once sat at 190, 200 or higher often fall to the 130 to 145 range within 2 to 3 weeks of changing breakfast structure alone, without any change in medication. The critical recommendation is to monitor your blood glucose 1 to 2 hours after breakfast consistently for 30 days. This gives you direct, personalized feedback on how your body is responding, and it creates the empirical record that your physician needs to see in order to have an informed conversation about whether your medication regimen needs to be adjusted as your glucose control improves. The goal of every strategy in this video is to give your body the biological support it needs to function the way it was designed to. Your pancreas was not designed to manage the chaotic, spike-driven glucose environment created by a modern processed food breakfast. But it responds beautifully, even in its current state, when given a structured, science-aligned nutritional environment to work within. The damage of years of poor blood sugar control is not irreversible. The research is clear that meaningful, measurable improvements in glycemic control are achievable at any age, including well past 60, including with long-standing diabetes, and including in people who have felt like they've tried everything. What they often haven't tried is precision. And that is what these 6 strategies represent. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time. And leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one. And it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar. Most people find out way too late. And by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox. And inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.